G'day guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of the rebuild. I've been busy taking this coat of paint off the hull. It's been super challenging, but I got there in the end. There was actually 2 coats of paint, a red and a white, just before I got back down to the gel coat. I really wanted to go back down to the original gel coat only because I didn't want to have any bad surprises if I was to repaint the hull. I didn't want anything as far as a bad reaction because it was acrylic or polyurethane or things like that. So I thought I'd go back down to bare gel coat. Same thing for under the boat. I really wanted to remove all the gel coat underneath. There was a lot of stress cracks and I wanted to start from fresh. The next step was to remove that messy edge left behind from the separation of the hull and the deck. To do so, I only just used a jigsaw to remove most of it, and after that I used a little hand router with a flush trim bit against the hull with a bearing, and it made the job quite easy and it gave me a nice flat finish. Once that step complete, I decided to respray the hull with only resin to try and get a really good bond with any future coats to the hull.
Very good. Hang on, this looks like Courtney's doing. Wow, very good stuff. What about you, Jordy? Jordy, you alright?
It is now time to prepare the hull for repairs. Sanding the existing fiberglass so we have a great bond with any other future coats. Once we had finished sanding, it was now time to repair the hull. We found a hook at the back of the boat where the boat was actually going down. So we got some resin and some 1708 and started to fill all the areas that needed to be filled. Once they were filled, the boat felt quite strong, but it was time to straighten everything out with some filler. The filler I used was vinyl ester fairing compound, and it is super easy to sand. And for that reason, I did not want to add too much of a thickness of the filler. So I wanted to only add what I really needed because this stuff is not structurally strong. Only the resin and the mat is. After all that sanding, there was still quite a few little spots that needed to be repaired, so more vinyl ester fairing compound and more sanding down the road.
Alright guys, I've just put that filler on. It's already starting to go hard. Just left it out in the sun to try and get that exothermic reaction. Heats up and gets nice and hard. So once these ones will go off in a couple of hours, I'll go again and do that one. Fill that one up. And I'll do the same for this side. Just filled these two, and I'll go ahead and do that one. Once I've done that, I'm basically trying to sand the whole thing nice and flat, nice and even, and then we'll go up to the next rib. Just finished putting the last little bit of fairing compound on. It's pretty warm out here today, so it's already starting to go off. I've put it on about maybe 15 minutes ago and it's already going hard. These are already pretty much cured, so we'll let that harden up for another couple of hours so it's done. I just wanted to show you guys which fairing compound I'm using. I'm using the vinyl ester fairing compound from Trojan Fiberglass. Now, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but this is what it's like. It's just a tub. It's already got your filler inside with your resin, which is vinyl ester. And I've just got my little scales. I'll put my platform on there and zero it off. Got my hardener. Slap some on there, put the hardener on top, mix it all together and start spreading. That's about it. So we'll wait for this to cure for a while and then I'll do the fun part. Start sanding. Alright, just finished sanding. It actually came up really nice. Nice and flat. There's a couple of spots that I'll come back tomorrow and fill them in. Nothing too bad. Overall, like these little ones like that. Overall, it's really good. And I'll show you what I mean by straight. That's pretty good. Tilt it. Not bad at all. Other side is the same. Really good. Okay, so this is that side. I don't know if you can tell with the camera, but it is very smooth. There's little bits like this I'll still need to fill in at the back. Overall, I'm pretty happy with that. I wanted to explain to you guys as well, the tools that I'm using, they're mostly custom made. It's not stuff that I usually buy at the shop. It's basically just a piece of 50mm square, 50 by 50, I think it's about 2mm alloy. I got a bit of timber, and the bit of timber is actually screwed all the way through, so it's perfectly straight. And I've just double-sided tape some 40 grit sandpaper. So this one is very flat. This is my straight edge that I check to see if it's straight enough. And I've just made this little custom sanding board, and I thought about how can I try and get some curves in there. So I've actually cutted it into little bits here like that to try and maybe get a little bit of a bend. So that's my little custom tool. And I've also made these ones, but only on one side, so I don't start eating through the inside of the rib. Alright, I think it's time to call it a night. We'll be back in the morning, do some more filling, do some more sanding. Hopefully we'll get it spot on. Catch you then. Alright, so it's the next day. I have actually finished doing all the sanding. I have sanded that one, and that one. Nice and smooth. Done the same on the other side. Nice and smooth. Now I've just had this idea. I've filled this one up with the fairing compound, just with a little spatula, I guess you could call it, and it looks pretty rough. And I've just had this idea yesterday of using a rigid piece of metal like that. I've cleaned it up, sanded it and waxed it so it doesn't stick. And what I've done is I've made some filler, and I've laid the filler in the middle with a piping bag, and I've laid my piece of metal on top. Now it's pretty thick, you can see how thick it is, and the idea of what I had was to try and reduce the amount of sanding so I could put just the right amount, but it still looks pretty thick. So what I'm going to do on the next one to try and reduce it even more, I'm going to mix my fairing compound with some resin, and by doing that I'm going to make it more liquid. So in theory we're going to do this one, so in theory it should flow better and give me a thinner coat to just what I need, because it's still not straight. Down in the middle over there I've still got a bit of a dip, about half a mil, maybe a little bit more, not quite a mil. So that's what we're going to do, just to try and make it even better compared to this. Like, that's not bad, but I reckon we can do better. Alright, let's give it a crack. It's been a few hours since we've laid that down there. I've looked at it, it's pretty hard. I think it should crack off. Not bad at all. Okay, so here it is, guys. It's actually turned out really good. I'll have really minimal sanding to do. All this excess stuff is probably just going to crack off like that. Really good. Then I don't have to spend too much time sanding all this up. Saves on sandpaper. And it's actually turned out, if you can see on the camera, it's quite flat. this is most likely gonna come back down anyway, so that doesn't matter too much. Turned out really good. Alright, well, we'll wait for this to finish curing. I'll prep the other side and we can lay this one down. I'll still need to prep it, give it a quick sand, wipe it with some acetone, and repeat all these steps, and hopefully we'll get something very smooth. So I don't know what happened to that previous video when I was actually making the putty. The GoPro decided to have a hissy, so I'll do it again. This is for the next one. So what I'll start by doing is getting my fairing compound, bucket open. I'll turn my set of scales on. I'll put everything on so I can zero it, including my little spreader. So I'll zero that, so whatever fairing compound I put in there is the actual true amount, otherwise I'm adding the weight of all the equipment. So that's 0, so now I can get my fairing compound, put it on there. Okay, I reckon it's plenty. Alright, put my little thing on there, put everybody on there at the same time. Close my bucket. So I've got 230 grams. Get my hardener. What about CC on there? It's not too hot, so okay. Start mixing that. Okay, so my putty is made, ready to go. Now we're going to be making a little bit of resin. So it helps to have the same type of container. I forgot to mention just earlier that I'm using vinyl ester fairing compound, and this is vinyl ester resin. So it's the same resin that's actually inside the fairing compound. So what I do is I take my empty jar, put it on the scales, and zero it, and then I put the one with my resin on there, so I know how much resin I'm using, so I know how much catalyst to put in there. So I've got about 60 grams of resin. Put 1 cc will be plenty. Okay. Get my little mixer. Okay. So again, you can see the amount of bubbles that is inside here. I'll take my little special tool. And the bubbles pretty much gone. It's a lot better. go. There's still some bubbles in there, but I guess it's a lot now. Alright, so got my fairing compound here. Make a little dent in there. Start with a little bit. So the reason why I'm doing that is to make my putty a little bit more liquid. Not so much as a putty, a hard paste, but more of a liquid putty, so it tends to spread a lot easier. You can tell it's a lot more liquid. Than what it is in a normal putty. Try and select it all. Make sure we've got it all mixed up properly. Already sucked all the air out of my piping bag. Piping bag ready. So there's all the excess running along the side. The mark that I have put there just to stop there. After that it starts to curve down. There's not much point putting any filler there. On the inside, that's what it looks like. So all that stuff that's actually come out is the stuff that you would usually sand because it's all excess. So we'll see how this one turns out. I'll leave it in the shade until that bit of steel has cooled down, and then I'll put it back out in the sun just because I don't want it to cure too quick either. It's looking good. You can kind of tell how flat it is already. I'm pretty happy. Okay, so it's hardened up. It's cured, it's pretty hard. I thought I would give you a bit of a close up when it pops off, just to give you the satisfaction. Too bad. It's quite good actually. Yeah, I must have just moved it off. That's okay, I can fix that up. It's not too much of an issue. At least most of it is laid down. And while this one was actually curing, I've managed to sand this one, what I did earlier. And it's very flat. Just to give you guys an idea, you can see the daylight in there. This is how I'm checking it. That's very straight. Not even just leaving it like that. That's perfect. Beautiful. There. Hey guys, alright, it's been a few days of hard work, sanding, more fiberglass, fairing, sanding, over and over again, and I've said to you guys that in my previous videos that this project had a bit of a twist, and the reason why I'm doing all this hard work to straighten everything out is because this boat's actually going to be extended. So I'm going to build an extension off the back of the boat, and the extension is going to be about 1 meter. So I'm going to extend the back of the boat about 1 meter. I'm going to create a mold, and the reason why I've been going so hard at it to fix the problems at the back of the boat, I actually had it's what you call a hook, and on this part of the hole here it was actually dipping down. When I laid a straight edge, it wasn't flat, it wasn't running straight. So I've been adding a lot of 1708 with some chopped strand underneath in here, a bit of fairing compound, and once I had finished these flat areas, I've noticed that my strakes were not straight either. They were running at an angle, and then they were doing a hook as well. So they were going back out and in. So I fixed those as well by filling them in, sanding it with a nice straight edge. So now the back is perfectly flat. And I know it doesn't look like much now because there's so many different kinds of patterns and colors and stuff like that. So what I've done is I've rubbed it back with some 40 grit sandpaper, and today I'm going to be making a mixture with some resin but also some fairing compound inside, just to make it easier to sand again, so I can get a nice flat surface. Once I've done that, I'm going to respray the portion of the mold that I'm going to be taking just with resin, so I can have a nice glossy finish, so I can lay down my red tooling gel coat so I can start the process of the mold. The boat's also going to be extended in height. So this part here, it's going to be raised about 200 mil. Because I'm making the boat longer, I think it makes perfect sense to also make the boat a little bit deeper. So when you're standing in the boat, you have this idea of being actually in the boat properly, especially with the kids inside. So the plan is, once I've made this extension and I've made the mold and everything's all good, I'm going to relay a new layer of probably 4 or 5 sheets of 1708 on top, kind of sealing the deal between the extension and the existing hull. So that'll be done on both sides, inside and outside, making it super strong. So yeah, today basically is going to be a bit of spraying, and I'm going to be making 3/4 of resin and 1/4 of fairing compound mixed together. So instead of just being resin, it's going to be a little bit easier to sand and fair as well once I want to do the finished product. And you're probably wondering, why are you trying to make something so perfect if you're going to lay more resin? Well, I'm going to try and use the vacuum infusion system. So if I have any defaults now, they're going to amplify as I go and as I lay more resin. So I want to try to start with something pretty spot on and then keep adding. Alright, so that's the big reveal. This is going to be one of a kind, Swiftcraft is actually going to be longer than any other Swiftcrafts and higher. Stay tuned. Big guys, just finished spraying it. It's actually come out really good. So my mix was 3/4 resin and 1/4 filler, and it's the vinyl ester fairing compound with the vinyl ester resin that I'm using. I forgot to mention that just before. There's still a few little pinholes and deformations, but this is the idea, so I can see exactly where I need to do a little bit more work. Getting a glossy finish kind of highlights where it needs a little bit more attention to make it all good. Like here I've got a few little pinholes. I don't know if you can see them with the reflection of the sun, but there's a few little defects still that needs a little bit of attention. And I guess that's why I'm doing this, so I can see where I need to keep going and keep working on and keep filling and sanding. And the reason why I'm not just using fairing compound is because on the existing resin here, when I was sanding and I'm trying to get something glossy, it's quite impossible because the hairs of the fiberglass of the chop strand there is still sticking out. So being able to lay some resin down will kind of eliminate that. I'll have a glossy finish when I sand it. So there you go. That step is now complete. There's a few little bugs stuck on there, but that's all good. The resin's already starting to take now. It's starting to go hard. It's still a bit tacky, but it's no liquid anymore. So there you go. Next step, sanding.
This is a little throwback from before. I actually forgot to include this footage in part 1 of the rebuild, and to be honest, I think the kids were more excited than me to remove the deck from the hull.
Looking at the corner of your eyes, so I pick my heart up off the floor, move my feet closer to yours, catch my breath and I say, I'm the one you're looking for. So come on, dance a little dance. Take my hand, darling, take a chance. You be my queen, I'll be your king. Show you everything that you've been missing, shorty. So come on, dance a little dance. Got me in a trance in just one glance. So don't wait no more. I'm me, I'm more. I'm the one you're looking for, shorty. Oh, girl, I see you over there hesitating, deliberating. You keep me waiting on a sign, looking at the corner of your eyes. So I pick my feet up off the floor, move my hips.
Alright guys, thank you for watching. This is the end of part 2. Part 3 will be making the mold and starting to do the extension on the boat. So keep watching and give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you very much. Come on, dance a little dance. Got me in a trance in just one glance.